AskGunQuestions.com is a website that we built back in 2007, and since then, for the last 15 years, people have been able to ask questions of simple to advanced nature, and we attempt to answer them in different ways over the years. Join us now as we start a new series to answer gun questions. All right, well, evidently, this is the last Ask Gun Questions. We showed up today, and it's just Krabby Turtle. Welcome. If you have any questions, that'll be the last gun question, I guess. I'll just drop the puppy into the recycle bin there, if I can figure out a way to get him into the recycle bin. Oh, wait, no, Clover came back. All right, well, I guess we'll keep doing the show then. I thought this was the last one. I was about to put the puppy into the recycle bin and end this show. So Clover's joining us. Let's do the actual beginning. AskGunQuestions.com is a website that we built back in 2007, and since then, for the last 15 years, people have been able to ask questions of simple to advanced nature, and we attempt to answer them in different ways over the years. Join us now as we start a new series to answer gun questions. All right, well, here's the deal. Clover's here, but he ain't here because he doesn't know how to work his computer. Bought a new computer that uses the Windows, and he doesn't know how to work it. So, Tony, I don't know what's up with Tony. He's probably out doing something, living the lifestyle. So we're asking gun questions. It's what we do on Saturday, and welcome to the people that are joining us today. 500 Magnum is joining us live. Good afternoon, or good afternoon for you. Krabby Turtle, also good afternoon. You are the two people watching today. Now, there might be other people watching, but since they haven't said anything in the comments, how would we know who they are? Could be 7 versions of Clover, whatever tech issues he's having. So it sounds like it looks like he's back now. You back now? Oh, now he's muted. Does Tony have a shoot today? I don't know. He may, but I haven't been on Instagram. I've been out running around this morning, so I haven't been looking at the internet. I set this up late last night and sent out the links. I usually send them out in the morning, though. Oh, Tony just did a post about it, so. Not. So I think Clover's dealing with some sort of whatnot. Krabby Turtle is asking, what would a pug carry? Well, this is the thing. This pug doesn't need to actually carry because he's already carrying lethal arms on him already. So turns out I had to license these arms because they're lethal. He's got claws on the end of them. He's got all these muscles all on him, and he uses them in fancy ways that has been handed down to him through the ancients. He also has these, which are just as lethal. And then he's got a set of fangs. Now, if there's any children or little old ladies watching, be careful because it's going to scare everybody. He's got these fangs. Look at them fangs. You could eat people with these, bite them, tear them to shreds. He just chooses not to use them. Now, I'm not saying he chews them. I'm saying he decides not to use these lethal implements. These giant eyes like this can see right through your bullshit. So he's got that also. Ultimate awareness. But I think in reality, what would he carry? Probably an NAA pug. It was named after this dog. It was designed by this dog. Or for these dogs. Notice the profile of this dog's face. He's got a bulbous front here, right? Kind of a round area here, you could say. And then a big, thick area right here. Now, if you go look at a pug, it's got the bull barrel with the full underlug, right? Full underlug. It's got the cylinder on it. It's got the hammer. So the pug was designed right after these dogs. And that's probably what he would carry. No, I don't watch that dude's videos on the regular, so I'll watch that one if you mentioned it, but it puts out a lot of videos, and occasionally I'll watch one for reference or something, but definitely not every single one. Clover's back, I think.
Maybe, hopefully. Am I?
Yeah. Little quiet. I don't know if that's an issue or something, but it's 5x4. Clear, but a little bit low on volume.
Okay. Well, I don't know. Maybe I need to talk louder.
No, yeah, that's a million times better. Yeah, so that's all it was. That's all it was.
Yeah.
Sometimes what I'll do is I'll put my headset up here. I have it retractable from the ceiling, and I'll forget. So if I have it down here, I think it's louder probably.
Right.
All right. So this is way better, right, for mine, because I now have my microphone sort of right in front of my face.
Yeah.
I'm actually thinking about getting. I'm thinking about investing $5 in a microphone. There's one at the Dollar Tree. I keep going in there to buy their welcome mats for $1.25 to use as patch panels. So
Right.
I walk past their like electronics section, and they've got some like gamer stuff like keyboards with LEDs in them and mice with LEDs. And you can't get around that stuff. They put LEDs in everything. So like this mouse has LEDs in it, and I can't do nothing about it. I just turn them off. But there's some setting in here where you can shut them off. The microphone though is like $5, $5.99, and I figure it's cheap. But I'm using a cheap mic anyway. But can I do this? I have this thing on a microphone stand that comes from a radio station, like a really nice microphone stand here. That's that. And I was thinking about putting the microphone on the stand instead of my headset is just floating in space here. Anyway, that's a little tech. So what's going on with your setup if you want to talk about it? What, did you buy something new or change something around or what happened?
What do you mean? Like,
Oh, well, I thought maybe you had worked on something. I thought maybe you said something about getting a new laptop. I assumed you were putting together
oh,
some new equipment.
no, no.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I got to move everything to a different location for the podcasts on Wednesdays and Thursdays. And so
Oh, really? So you
obviously,
have two studios and you move your stuff between the
yeah, I
studios?
mean, I have technically three. I
Oh,
don't know that you would call them studios, but I have three places
places
in
to
which I
film.
can
Yeah.
film. Yeah. So last season I had a different corner basically of a room, and then I decorated another corner for this season. And then once the 3D printer comes in, I'll have a 3D printer corner dedicated to the 3D printer mainly. And then um, I've got a corner so 4 corners in a room, right? And then the fourth I've got set up for the card channel. So I've got to move and then I've got the man cave, which I'm in now. So um, the biggest thing is when I move out here, I unplug the headset, everything, and the laptop, and carry it back out here. And so I've got power chargers. I've got everything in the house for like the studio. And so I don't got to move any of that. I've got an extra monitor there. I've got everything I need is there. I just got to move the laptop and the headset. And for whatever reason, I was on with Ghost last night with his car channel, speed limit 155 or whatever it is, talking vehicles, and it was fine. And I log into this today, and it was really weird. Like the audio I could hear was coming through my laptop speakers, not my headset, even though it said it was coming through my headset. And so I logged out and back in to the StreamYard. It still did the same. What I had to do is I had to go and switch my laptop audio to the headset and then switch it back again, and now it's working. So I don't know, something glitched somewhere. That being said, I've been battling. The website's been down since Thursday, so
What are you talking? Well, let's get into some nerd stuff today. So I'm going to put the website up here as a note to myself, but first I'm going to ask you about. Well, I was going to ask, have you ever done studio reviews or like studios tours? That might be interesting for people that think that you probably, maybe I don't know what people assume honestly, but what do you think people have for studios? You think people devote a room, or like they devote a corner, or they set up for the video and then take it back down, tear it back down, that kind of thing. Because I was also going to add that if I get the embroidery machine, I was thinking about doing the same thing, like take a corner of a room, just completely move everything out of that corner of the room, put something on the wall as a background, and then set that thing up so that it can be essentially a studio for that, the working it and running off projects and stuff, just like what you're talking about with the 3D printer. I think a lot of people do that with their, I guess, equipment, like new tools like that.
right.
Um, so yeah, have you done any kind of? I don't think I've seen anything where you've done like a here's how I film, or here's my studio. You got something
No,
against
I
it? You
mean
just haven't had time, or it's not something you want to add to your channel?
so it looks way better on camera than it does in person, and I think it's probably that way for everybody. Like, so in trying to, and I do some pictures and I do some things with YouTube channel members and Patreon, right? Some like unlisted behind the scenes thing. I have done some things like that, but it's difficult because if I get out of frame, you got to realize that however you set up your studio, you set it up in a certain frame. Like I set my camera up, I'm like, okay, here's my frame, and I put all my parts and pieces in, right, to the background and where the stuff's at, according to the frame, according to what you're seeing on the camera. So if you pan to the little bit left or right or up or down, I mean, you catch other stuff in my house or in the man cave or wherever it might be, even out on the range is that way, right? And like there's certain things that I don't want to pan and show people. Like, sometimes things are messy. Sometimes there's stuff I may have in my house or in my man cave I don't want people to see what that sort of stuff. So outside on the range is the same way. I mean, we've got a lot of equipment and different things, and I don't want to show off that kind of stuff. That ain't nobody's business. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. And that's, I think, part of what I was trying to get at is that that element that you just kind of brought up there, that people, I don't think people pay attention to where something's filmed, but often it's just somebody clears off of plates on their messy table, puts down a piece of carpet or a towel or something, a blanket, something that creates a background, puts down a piece of wood or something, a tile, or some kind of piece of chalkboard or something, and then sets something up, takes the video or makes the video, puts it all away, and it's back to just being a chunk of their messy house. And that's sort of what I'm trying to get to, is that you don't have to devote, like, remember, it's sort of the concept of I'm going to do that as soon as I get a good camera.
It
As
looks
soon as I
way,
know how to
yeah.
video edit, I'm going to do that kind of thing.
It looks way more polished. A lot of pretty much every time anything you watch looks way more polished than it actually is. You know what I mean? It's
Well,
kind of
not
like,
always, because
I
that's the
mean,
thing.
think
Because, like,
about think about movie sets, right? Like it looks like it's being done in an apartment building, but in reality, there's like some fake wall partitions. There's like 2 rooms built with fake wall partitions, and they literally like move the decorations around from one scene to the next, or maybe move the angles of the wall or something, right? They're not filming that in a building. I mean, they're not filming it in an apartment building, right? They're filming it in like a big production warehouse or
like
something like that.
Seinfeld's was a studio, not a actual
Yeah,
apartment. Yeah.
yeah. Or
Well,
if you watch, I mean, a great example is The Big Bang Theory. I don't know if anybody's watched that, but they got to walk up the stairs to their apartment, and it shows them walking up and down the stairs a lot. But the hallway scene, like up and down the stairs, is the same exact set, and you'll notice that because you can see certain scratches on doors and things on the wall, and they just move pictures and they put plants and they do different things. So that as they go up a floor, it looks like they're actually going up a floor, but in reality, they're not going up a floor. It films them walking up the stairs. They change the scenery. It films them walking up the stairs again. They change the scenery. you know. Um, so yeah, it's the same type situation. It's why they call it a production, right?
right. So as soon as you say that, though, of course, there's exceptions to rules. So there are shows where they'll just bring cameras, small cameras, GoPro type things in, and then film in real places. There's whole series and things like that. But
Oh,
then
there are.
there's also the channels where they will either have a collaborative group, or when I'm not collaborative, they'll have a crew, they'll have employees, and the giant channels for sure have studios, so they'll have multiple rooms for all the different stuff, and they will have all elaborate setups. And typically you build an elaborate setup and you're going to record that, document it, because it costs you a bunch of money and you're proud of it and you were able to do something that you probably wanted to do, so you're going to just document it and have it for your own records of being able to have accomplished it, type of thing. And that's what I guess is one of my angles, is that when you're somebody out there doing your thing and you're watching and you see something like that, somebody blows out a new studio, I'm going to devote the new room in the house to this new studio. Now my YouTube's big enough, or my blog is big enough, or my podcast is big enough that we're taking over the sewing room or something, or the kids moved out, we're taking over that room,
Yeah,
and that's going to be
right.
devoted, right? You hear that kind of stuff, and then people are proud of it and they show it all off, or maybe they invested some money and they bought a new computer and stuff. So I try to show my stuff, not to like my computers and stuff, not to show, hey, look at how much my $300 computer cost or my $40 monitor, but like, my whole setup was less than $500, and everything you see that has gone websites on it was done with 3-year-old stuff that I bought recommissioned or reconditioned. Like
Right.
nothing I've never had. If I have resources to spend, it's not on equipment and stuff. I enjoy equipment. I like it, but there's different ways that people approach it. And that's where I know a lot of people, especially at your level, are going to be in that middle place where you want to leave it set up mainly because you're doing it often enough that it's a pain in the butt to pull it back down all the time. But when you leave it set up, it becomes a place where like somebody's going to set that dishcloth there or something, and then you got to clean it all the time. So having, there's just all of different ways of doing it. So now that Tony jumped in, thanks for joining us. We were just talking about studios and stuff. You've got a little unique situation. You're traveling all the time, and then your place you've moved. Let's just say you've moved a couple of times, so you don't have super consistency for over time. But when it comes to actually filming stuff and having like a studio set up, would you go to the setting up a studio area or a place to film, or do you kind of set it up where you are and go with more temporary at the moment type of studio?
I go with what's the best at the moment. Right now, again, I'm staying with my brother. Get a quiet room, get a solid background, and just do it. When I'm recording the show, I mean, a lot of you guys have heard me on the road, so people understand that things are happening, in someone's life. Just make it the best quality programming I can at the time, and it should work. It works for most people, I think.
Yeah, I think it just depends on what you're doing, right? Like what type of stuff you're doing.
That too, yeah. I mean, definitely. Look, we do this show, which is really cool, but people are here for the answers and the conversation.
Right.
Gun and Gear Review podcast, same thing. Self-defense gun stories. It's more like, all right, let's keep it quiet, let's keep it clean, and let's keep it focused, because we have 4 stories to do in like 25 minutes or less. So that's totally different. And then my podcast, it's just conversations with me, but I set it up. And sometimes I'm in the car, sometimes I'm in a room, but it's like, let's get this done, especially this year. I've done more shows this year than the entirety of last year, because I've dedicated that time to it. But you're going to hear it when I can record it, because waiting around for perfect just means the shows aren't getting done like they should be. And I've heard no complaints from anybody about the show quality. I think I've heard just people are glad that we have them consistently now, which is awesome. I appreciate that.
I think the presentation side of it, I've never been a fan or like chased that. I understand it, I guess, but probably not as much as I could or whatever. I don't care though, because like I say, I don't really give it too much, but I understand that it's probably one of its bigger advantages is when there's that 80% in the middle who are like, let me go check this out. And, having a I don't know, like a nice presentation that's easy to understand and I don't want to say dumbed down, but, basic and not really going too much into assuming people are at any level of, into the community or anything. There's probably something to that, but, I mean, that's like kindergarten or that's like basic intro stuff. You can only do it so long and you go nuts, you go numb. So, make the stuff, put it out there and then go do your thing. That's been my philosophy.
And when you have a certain set, let's just say, right? Because that's kind of what we were talking about with like backdrops, like where you film. Oftentimes you get people that they're more interested in what's behind you or on the wall or whatever than what you're saying or what you're talking about. And it's like, this is not, especially if you're doing that's what aggravates me to an extent. And I get it because I jump into chats and can be the same way sometimes on live streams or whatever. But like they jump in live. So let's take my podcast on Wednesdays and Thursdays, right? Those are recorded to go into the audio world. So I don't want them visually centric. And then also we're having a conversation with the person, with the guest. It's about, I have those guests on because it's about the conversation with the guest. And then you'll get people in that want to talk about something in the background and it's like, it's not why we're
like your
here.
lamp or whatever.
Yeah. It's like that. I appreciate it. You know what I'm saying? But that's not why we're here. And oftentimes that's one of the things that I changed with this setting And little behind the scenes, people can get some behind the scenes. I don't know if you've noticed it's the 4 episodes this season so far, but I don't have access to even type in the side chat. And there's a couple of reasons, because I will, first of all, it's logistical, because I've got a big TV that's far enough away that I can still, the light isn't bad, but yet it's close enough I can still read the chat screen and all that off of that TV, and I'm not having to look down at a laptop or anything like that. It's in front of me, and so my laptop is there, and being able to have a keyboard in my lap or something like that, that isn't going to fly logistically, right? Even though I could get a wireless, I could do something. It's just, I don't want to do that. And then, second of all, it prohibits me from going off on tangents out in the side chat, because sometimes that happens. Your guest is talking and somebody on the chat is saying something, and you reply to them in the chat, right? And often I'll lose my train of thought or my focus on what the guest is talking about. And I don't like that situation. I don't like when I'm typing in the side chat, I'm like, oh crap, what did he just say on there? Right? Or I catch on something that was important, and and I'm not able to follow up because I don't remember what it was, or whatever the case may be, right? It throws me out of the conversation, and I've realized I don't want to be out of the conversation.
No,
Yeah,
and it makes it weird and distracting, I'm sure, for people listening who aren't reading it or paying attention to the comments, or listening to it, just listening.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. You bring somebody on the show and then you don't pay 100% attention to the conversation. It's like,
right,
what the heck, bro? And we've all been guests on shows, but it's like, okay, this guy's distracted by what else is going on the show. And I'm trying to bring my A game.
I don't know what Tony was just saying, because I was reading the comments, but I think people could really pay attention to the chat.
Right. Well, I mean, we can go live at any time by ourselves. It's a wonderful technology, right? And just chat with the people that want to just BS out there in the chat. Like, that's a thing. We can do that. But, if you have a guest, if you've got a specific topic, if you want to drive some specific thing home, then, I mean, that's the goal, right? It's like, I appreciate the live. That's why I record them live, so that if anybody out there has questions related to the conversation, the topic, the guest, the company, the product, whatever, they can get out there and get involved, and I have the ability to highlight them. I got the ability actually on G-Web's channel here too, but I've got the ability to highlight them and then read them, so that the people in the audio world know that, hey, 500 Magnum has this question. Hey, Mike White 2A has this question, right? Or this comment, and I can read that out. But as far as actually participating myself in the live chat, I pulled that completely out of my production for this new season. And honestly, I like it, because, like I said, it keeps me more involved, more engaged with the guest.
What did we say? I'm going to change subjects and play moderator, because I think we're going on a tangent, and it's a decent tangent, but it's just, we're Ask on Questions show. But it was just because Tony Clover was having a weird issue, so I just kind of was riffing on that while he was dealing with a mic issue, and that turned into the studio conversation and everything. So but I was going to say, though, what were we going to talk about on Tuesday? I forgot. At the end of the show, I said, why don't we talk about this? And I was like, yeah, whatever, because I don't think it was something we really.
Was it a website related thing? It seems like it was.
I don't remember. That's the thing. And I was just going to say, do you want to change it to interviewing and just the concept of interviewing, since that's interesting and it would be worth chatting about?
Yeah.
And since I can't remember what we were going to talk about anyway. Okay.
Yeah. And with the troubles I've had with the website, I mean, we can eventually start talking about website stuff too.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm definitely down for talking websites anytime. You know that. All right. So getting back to it, we did get some cool questions and comments, I guess, from the people that are live. So we're talking about interviews. We're not interviewing. This is definitely a roundtable with y'all as the people that are here live and listening in the future as part of the roundtable. So, but we're here to answer questions. So I'm starring some of these, and we'll get to a couple of them. Yeah, a couple of them here. But we did have a question that came in this month. We're actually answering a question that came in the month that it came in, on the 12th of this month. What aftermarket magazines will fit into a Savage Stance 9mm single stack? So is a Savage Stance a model that I've never heard of?
Yeah, Savage just put out their first striker fire pistol. Had to
Oh,
be a couple of years ago, and it's called the Stance.
okay.
That is an Honor Guard handgun, right? They bought out basically the Honor Guard design.
Yeah, you're saying that, and it sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Because I actually used to talk to Honor Guard, and they didn't do the stand up. They didn't do every model. I think they just did one model of the Honor Guard.
Right.
An Honor
Yeah.
Guard. You want to do a elevator speech of what that was all about?
Honor Guard was just a striker fire single stack. They came out, and I just think they got lost in the jumble of single stack polymer 9mm short barrel. What was it, like 3.5-inch barrel? But they had one called the Standoff, and what do you call that? The under part, the dust cover. I think the dust cover extended out slightly past the barrel for contact shots.
Had like an underbite.
Yeah,
Keep it in battery. Yeah.
Keep it in battery if you have the firearm pressed up against someone in close quarters.
So that was their thing then. That was like
another one of those things is before there was nowadays the whole modular drop-in fire control group and all that mess. It's a really common thing. When Honor Guard first came out, it wasn't nearly as common. They were one of the first that was doing it.
Okay, see, I forgot that part. But, okay.
You could change frames. You could change frames very easily. Is what I'm getting at with the Honor Guard.
Yeah, actually, we'd had conversations about them helping us out with the diversity shoot, but the craziness with New Jersey handgun laws was a problem.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, irrelevant to except for within historical context, but I'm pretty sure that years ago I can't even think of his name now. Unfortunately, the guy that owned it, but I think I had him on a podcast years ago.
That's what I was going to say. I remember you or Ghost had him on a podcast. It's impossible to tell because you guys are on each other's podcast. So it was one of y'all's podcasts was talking to him, or maybe both. And I thought their deal was like they were all military company or something, like everybody was.
Yeah. I remember that. Like everybody there was a veteran or whatever. Yeah.
So, okay. So that's interesting. That was a while back. And then, so essentially Savage bought that brand or that tooling essentially, and maybe the people, and kept that gun thing alive. That would be an interesting conversation in the bigger picture. Instead of just talking to individuals in the industry, to talk to people about the industry and to give more awareness on how this works. But people come up with guns and that takes a little while, right? You know, you come up with an idea and you're like, oh snap, I came up with the best idea yet. And I'm going to shop that around. And if everything lines up, you get that to market, right? But how long does that take? It could take a long, long time because, you know, you've got to sell people on the idea. They've got to be interested. It's got to work and, you know, it's got to be the right timing. So all this stuff, just like anything, right? Like you come up with a new motorcycle, a new guitar, it's going to be the same, right? So when you come up with a gun, though, think about the last few years, last decades or so. It went from nobody carried a gun except for cops and whatever, and maybe at the range or in like a reenactment scenario or hunting. And if you're hunting or a reenactment scenario, you're not carrying the gun and you're not using it. Now everybody, thanks to changing the Constitution, the concealed carry laws, the whole country has concealed carry, and that took place throughout the 90s and I guess the trickle into the 2000s. So that means a whole bunch of people start carrying, and that means a whole bunch of holster and gun innovation. And companies are like, we need new products, and now people carry. So now we're going to make all these guns carryable, and then the calibers, and I don't have to go into all the innovations there. So when somebody comes up with a new gun design, and they come up with it when single stack 9s are a new idea, or a 380 double stack would be a new idea, or a 45 ACP, whatever, you know, like whatever they come up with, the industry's still changing. And it's possible for somebody to come up with something and it just be too little, too late. If it would have been 8 months earlier or a year earlier, you know, it would have been we're getting that, whatever's happening with the papers there.
Sorry.
But I guess what I'm saying is the thing might just fail, not because of it was a bad idea or even a bad product, but just because it timed wrong or it could be bad, but timed right. You know, so there's all these different variations, and they don't just always fail and throw their stuff away or melt it all down and recast it or something. So in this case, it sounds like something happened with the company and the plans and the designs and stuff were bought. But we hear about that with Remington and with I think Mossberg's been sold a bunch of times, but I don't know if anybody's ever done any kind of thing, and I just missed it. That kind of is a bird's eye view or
Well,
space view or satellite view, I guess, of the industry over time and how the products and brands of like Kimber's moved around like 8 times, right?
yeah. Well, and not just companies, but like you mentioned, the products too. I know that the AMP handgun from Live Free Armory has
Mhm.
been. It's not a secret. They announced that it shot, but it's been sold to PSA now. Like PSA bought that design, right? They're still going to make it and stuff, but I guess PSA is back in the production costs and whatever. I don't know. I don't know the logistics of them or the economics or whatever of all that.
As long as
Back
they take care of the customer service responsibly.
Yeah. Back to the question though, real quick, is this is magazine interchangeability is a fairly new thing. Does it take Glock mags, for example, right? And so I think a lot of people don't understand for the vast majority of time, like magazine interchangeability was absolutely zero, not a thing for the most
Mhm.
part.
Oh no, it
And
was the other
so
way around. Like you'd get
yeah,
sued if you used somebody's magazine. Right?
Oh,
exactly. So understand, if you're out there and you're curious about that, understand first of all that it is a fairly new thing. Most magazines do not interchange. Now, do they use the same body? Will they use the same follower? Can they use the same spring? Can they use the same base plate or something like that? Yeah, I mean that's potential. And then the way they lock into the grip of the handgun or whatever, like those holes or catches, right, to lock that in, they'll move around on maybe a similar body. Now, with that said, speaking specifically of the stance, which used to be, of course, the honor guard, it is my understanding, and I've never played with this, never played around with this or anything else, but to get back more specifically to the question, two things. First of all, what I just said. Second of all, it's my understanding that those are based off of a Smith & Wesson Shield magazine. So, is it possible you could tweak on a Smith & Wesson Shield? It may fit right in there, but is it possible you could also tweak and do? Yeah, probably, but magazine availability is fairly easy on those as far as I know. So I don't know why you would necessarily worry about it. I think people are often looking for like a cheaper option or something. Um, and that's why they ask those questions about mag interchangeability, thinking they can get a cheaper mag, right? And they think that a lot of times because of Glock mags are not really expensive anyway. A lot of companies are interchangeable with a lot of things with Glock nowadays, and you can get really cheap Glock mags if you want to. And with the vast majority of handguns, again, that's not a thing.
yeah. Another thing is, like you said, it's magazine availability. A lot of these companies, to meet a price point, sell their gun with 1 or 2 mags. Well, I'm checking this thing out. Dude, come on, at least 3 mags. What's up? And now I want an extra magazine, and I don't have one. So now I have to go and look for your company, especially with a company like Stance, or even when it was come on, Honor Guard. If it's just for those specific firearms, and now I'm on a website trying to find something that's not really that popular, and now I run across it and it's 55, 65, $75 for a magazine, I would rather just take that hit initially with the purchase and not have to go through this. You know what I mean? Especially if it's again one of those firearms like a Stance, like the Mossberg, what MC2 or whatever they called their, um, single stack handgun, which that uses Glock mags. But
Yeah.
it is like, yo, come on, help me out here, man. This is trying to be my
Well,
carry gun.
and I know, but I mean, I differ too because I don't even. It doesn't bother me too much with the single mag. When you
Hmm.
get something, and one of the reasons is I'm not a subscriber of, if we're talking about carry, right? And the vast
Hmm.
majority of the firearms I purchase have nothing to do with carry, right? They're range
Yeah.
fun or hunting or whatever it might be. But even in a carry situation, I can't remember a time I've ever carried an additional magazine. I carry revolvers sometimes, right?
Hmm.
And I don't carry speed clips or anything like that, even with those. I don't feel that I'm going to end up in a situation where I need that type of firepower. And so for me, it's not that big a deal, but I will caveat that by saying also that I also know the availability. Like I said earlier, a lot of the magazines there's a lot of interchangeability when it comes to the springs or the
Mm-hmm.
followers or whatever in magazines, right? And so if I get one that starts to have problems, I know that, oh, well, I need to check. Maybe the feed lips got bent, right? Oh, I need to check. Maybe the follower was worn. Oh, maybe I need to just replace the spring in this, right? And it's not a big deal for me to do that. Whereas some people, maybe they don't understand. And so it's worth mentioning that things like that can be done. Because maybe they feel, oh, what if I get I get this firearm? It only comes with 2 magazines. What happens if one goes bad, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a backup. Well, things can be done. Magazines can oftentimes be repaired, be fixed, be maintained.
Yeah, see, I mean, now that I'm shooting more competitions and the year's about to start off, I'm like, I need a minimum of 4 mags. Now, some of the guys are using these local, local, we can call them outlaw competitions, just to get better at carry. You know what I mean? Feel more comfortable with your carry gun. So yeah, you're shooting your concealed carry gun or your EDC in a competition on a Friday with the guys down at the range, and you do need a minimum of 4 magazines. And it's like, well, guess what? You're gonna have to wait. You're gonna have to wait until the company starts putting more out. I mean, I don't think it's like a huge thing, but it depends on what you buy. And as somebody who
Yep.
started out with surplus, it's like, okay, yeah, Makarov mags doesn't cost that much. You can pick them up anywhere. But then it gets weird if you bought a Hudson H9. I saw somebody type that in the thing. All right, now you got to find the Hudson mags. And yeah, magazine interchangeability is a new thing. I think it's awesome. And I think it benefits us as the consumer way more. And it also benefits the manufacturer, because the thing that causes the most trouble, even for manufacturers, is getting a magazine that works and feeds reliably. And if you can just start out with one.
And most of the manufacturers, I would say that most of the manufacturers I know anyway, they don't manufacture the magazines. And
No.
so if you've got interchangeability across different models and different lines, that the manufacturer of the magazine that all of those companies are buying from, so that's one magazine, right, that they can make that fits a bunch of different firearms, and a bunch of different companies are going to buy that. And it's the economics of quantity or whatever,
Yep.
right? Like if
Mm-hmm.
they're able to mass produce one magazine for 10 guns as opposed to 10 magazines for one individual, right? Then potentially the cost drops on that as well.
All right. So
Yeah.
Now, is that passed on? Who knows? But yeah.
I'm gonna throw some alternate stuff in there. Tony brought up a good point with back in the day. There was a wealth of surplus mags from the Cold War and from the World Wars, and guns were wrapped around those. So your gun is wrapped around the mag. It's wrapped around the bullet in a semi-auto that comes out of a magazine. So you've got start thinking about it from the bullet is sitting there. You wrap a barrel around that bullet, and now you want to operate the slide or whatever so that you can get that next round in there. So you got to put that magazine in an angle so that that's going to happen. And you can't just go extreme with that. You can have lips to guide it and you move it into place, but you're not going to move it. There's a range there. So that's why and plus people's hands and stuff are all the same size. So, relatively. So there's a certain amount of play there. But that's a factor. So if you're going to use a Glock mag versus something else, that's where the whole grip angle comes in from. So if you're going to say I got a better grip angle than a Glock, well, then you better not use Glock mags because you're going to have a different, range there. So now the other side of a magazine, besides the springs and the followers and all that, is where that ejection, or excuse me, the what would you call it, the latch, the retaining latch is going to be. And if it's where your thumb is and it's a direct push, then that means if you're going to use a Glock mag, you better design your whole entire gun after you wrap the bullet around or the barrel around the bullet, and after you adjusted the magazine to be in line there, you now have to put your mag release where Glock put their mag release or where Smith & Wesson put theirs. Back in the day, what would happen is you'd get a 1911 mag and you'd make your gun around the 1911 mag, like High Point or something. I don't know if they did originally, but you know what I mean? Like some gun would wrap their gun around a 1911 mag, but now let's say they didn't want to put their mag release where Glock or where 1911s are. So they would just drill a new hole in the 1911 mag and call it a blah, blah, blah mag, right? This is an ABC mag, and it's really a 1911 mag with a different hole. And that's where I'm getting at the Beretta. before Beretta was popular here, it was popular in other countries as their military and police guns. So there was a ton of Beretta magazines, the Beretta 92 or whatever magazines. And you would find a ton of guns that use that magazine, and they would just drill a different hole wherever their mag release was, or in a different shape, maybe like a notch instead of a circle, or a circle instead of a notch, or something like that. And you had that interchangeability because of that availability of magazines that were pretty much built around the magazines that weren't just plentiful but built well, because there was plenty of magazines that weren't built well but were still built in mass, and you don't see guns wrapped around those, because the magazines, what Clover said, the magazines are important, but what I don't agree on is that aftermarket magazines help. Because let's say you build a gun and you build it around a decent magazine, your magazine or somebody else's decent magazine, and then somebody goes and buys a $6 version in plastic of that magazine. Sure, it fits into the gun and it, you know, the latch works, but now the inside dimensions are all screwy because they're using a different material and it doesn't feed well. So now is your gun the problem, or is it the $6 magazine somebody jammed in there? And I think that's a headache for gun manufacturers as much as the, oh, it's nice that, like you were saying, that somebody can, you know, buy a magazine and it fits in 9 of their guns and ours. I think there's both sides of that coin. The last thing I'll just bring up is that when you do get a weird magazine design that's not standard, you're also thinking mag pouches aren't going to necessarily, you either have to go to a universal mag pouch, which can be clunky, or have them custom made. So when you're carrying, you know, Clover's doesn't carry extra mags, but people that do, that's another factor to think about.
Yeah. I mean, dude, I think it's a great thing. I like the fact that I feel we're living in what will probably be looked back on as the golden age of firearms ownership, or maybe even the beginning of the golden age with 3D printing and everything else that's going on, and the court cases going that way, Supreme Court rulings. I mean, there's a lot going on.
I know what you're saying, but what about when the NFA is gone? That's going to be the actual golden age. We're leading up to that. I hear what you're saying, but I think we still got it. Belt-fed 22s.
I think we're on the way.
Full auto belt-fed 22s are coming.
I hope so. So I think it's amazing that we're to this point. And between the three of us, we have a lot of years looking at guns, reading gun magazines, being in this information gathering, you know, for entertainment purposes, really, for the three of us when we probably started. And it's like we've watched it change so much. And I think it has to, every now and again, we had to take a second out to appreciate the fact that this is freaking cool and it's getting cooler.
Man, Yeager used to say, these are the days. What did he used to say? I don't remember how he said it, but these are the good old days, essentially. Like you are living in the good old days. Just a couple of years from now, you're going to go, oh, those were the good old days. And you never think about it when it's actually the time.
Yep. That's why I try to appreciate it now. And I appreciate you having me on the show so we can just talk about this stuff.
I'm going to go with Anne-Marie's welcome everybody to the show. I think I've been hitting everybody as they show up and say, hey, thanks everybody for showing up to our live projects. Anne-Marie is asking, do magazines have replacement parts? I'll go first this time since I let you guys go first. But yeah, they definitely do. I'm going to ask the question and then step back, I guess. But yeah, they do have replacement parts. Some magazines are more maintainable than others. Some of them are designed to be disposable literally, and then some are close to there intentionally or not. And then others, like think of an Olympic gun, you know, something that's completely precise. I'm sure that they have more moving parts and more adjustable things than a regular gun, right? So there's going to be some spectrum there. But then I'll shut up and ask you guys the question: how many magazines do you think a person should have for each of their pistols? And then also go ahead and answer the replacement part one.
All right, I'll roll first. How many magazines should you have each of your pistols? I think 5. I think 5 minimum. But that's just me. And the reason I think that is if you have your carry gun, if that's the purpose of it, if it's a self-defense firearm, I think you should have at least 2 magazines dedicated to that you you make sure they function, but you don't take them to the range and let them drop on the ground and things like that. You try to keep those in good condition after you make sure they function. And then the other 3, at least, you can run rounds through, do your changes, mag changes, and practice being efficient with the gun and not care if the thing hits the ground or not. And now that, again, I'm starting to shoot competition, enough to run the competitions with and still abuse those, but still have your 2 main magazines for that. That's off the top of my head for a self-defense gun. And yes, you can rebuild magazines. I haven't because, for the most part, I have Glock mags or my CZ75 mags to my older gun that they just don't make that anymore. So I'm just taking care of the ones I have until then I'll have to figure out how they work. But I'm not running those guns like I used to. So they pretty much have regulated to second line status.
Yeah, I would go with, in most situations, 3. I think 3 is probably the minimum. And I agree with a lot of what Tony was saying about it.
Oh, and don't break yourself on that. No, that originally you should get what comes with it. If one comes with it, try to get another one and figure out how you can just stack them up. You don't have to do it all at one time. You don't have to build a war chest.
It's going to make a difference, like you said, depending on what you're doing too. If it's a range toy, especially if it's an older collectible something. I know situations where magazines are impossible to get for some things, and some people they're not necessarily impossible to get, but they're it's older model stuff. They're $100-$150 if somebody finds one, and that's for a used one, right? And so if it's something that just have because it's collectible, or you just want to take it out to the range every now and then and shoot it. Get one and then do a little bit of homework research on, how to replace followers and springs and things like that if you need to, because again, you can very likely, even on, old, obscure, rare magazines, you can replace springs and do things to repair those if need be.
Because as someone who likes range guns, because I like the personality. Hey, listen, people like guns for different reasons, and I really love the surplus gun and to be able to, hold that piece of history. So it's not as important to me to have like 5 magazines or something crazy like that for an older gun. But if it's something you're gonna run, if it's something you're gonna shoot, you want to make sure 100% that your mags, 1, will feed, and 2, you're not beating them up and getting a bunch of dirt in them to the ones you're actually going to use. You know what I mean? For that purpose. So having a PCC, having a pistol caliber carbine that takes a 32 round Glock magazine is cool, but the Glock mag that you're going to put your self-defense round in shouldn't be the one you drop it in the sand at the range.
All right. So this is one, if you want to go grab a cup of coffee or light a cigarette, because I'm passionate about this one, I'm going to rant for a bit. Definitely don't stop yourself from destroying magazines. What Tony just finished with there, get sand in your magazines and run them. Don't carry them, but run them. Figure out what it's like, how to get a gun working again when it's jammed up with sand. Figure out what it's like to diagnose a gun that's jammed up with sand, because you don't just magically know what your condition of your gun is under stress. So I'm going to start with a couple of things. When Henry asked the question, how many I don't know who asked the question earlier, but if there's replaceable parts for a magazine, that implies a couple of things. And I don't know what the implication is. It's either how do I be frugal with my magazines, or how do I upgrade my magazines typically, right? But beyond that, the question of how many, 10 at least and more. So when I go to gun shows, one of the ways I offset the price of admission to a gun show, if I pay for price of admission to a gun show, and there's no reason to do that if you're a content creator. Let's talk about that some Tuesday with Clover. But if you're paying to get into a gun show, the admission is going to be somewhere between $10 and $20, depending on the shows I've been to, maybe a bit more back east. Buy some magazines every single time you go to a show. Now, if you're getting your magazines a couple of bucks cheaper than you would somewhere online, or even if you're getting them the same prices online and you're supporting somebody who's supporting gun shows, you're supporting the industry and you're supporting the community, right? You're supporting an infrastructure of our community, but you're also getting a part of your gun. So let's talk about that gun again. Does your gun work without ammo? Right? Does your gun work without a barrel? Right? So the magazine, do you take your slide off and throw it on the ground? Do you take your grip safety panels off and wing them into places? Do you carry around your barrel on your belt all the time and sit down on stuff and get jammed into chairs? If you're fat, how often are you jamming your belt into stuff? What angle, what direction are the feed lips on anybody's carry mags? Are you doing that with your sights? Do you take any other part of your gun off and throw it on the ground and step on it? No, that's just a perishable part of your gun are the springs, the ammunition, and the magazines. Anybody who tells you a magazine is some precious thing is somebody who has, one, never had to really done anything with it, and two, paid $75 for the fucking magazine, and they're trying to justify it. If you're paying for a gun that has a $75 magazine, you're not sponsoring this show. There's a reason those people don't sponsor my shows. That's a luxury. That's like, okay, I'm going to buy a convertible with fancy tires. Now, if that's your vehicle to get out of Dodge, you've made a decision to buy fragile tires in a non-secure vehicle, right? It might look cool 99% of the time, but if you really have to get out of Dodge with it, it's not going to do the job. So if you're buying this thing as your only pistol and it's going to have to exist as your only pistol, what happened in Washington State with magazines recently on the recent calendar, the recent radar? What happened in Washington State? What is sitting in the desks of every anti-rights politician right now? What are they going after? Are they suggesting that what part of the gun isn't part of the arms, a part of the Constitution? So you are at risk of the real big issues. You're at risk of political issues of not being able to obtain stuff. Now let's talk about scarcity. So many new gun owners haven't dealt with any scarcity yet. Any. You haven't had a fire. We had a time when 2 of the ammunition companies caught fire and decided to do upgrades. So they kind of lost any ability to produce powder. And then at the same time, Europe allowed 22s to be shot by regular people or something. So we had this wicked shortage of 22s for years, and it impacted the market to where everybody was doom and gloom and saying, we're never going to even have 22 again. They're never going to put it back into production. Remember those years? Well, you don't remember when that's happened with magazines and stuff? Like Clover said, most of the magazines are made by whatever that company is, HSI or whatever. Like there's one company that knows what they're doing, and they make the magazines for everybody. So again, like we've got infrastructure, we've got scarcity, and we've got demand, and we've got these weird issues with toilet paper and stuff. So when you're sitting there and you have enough magazines and you've got 3, and your best friend comes over and says, my magazines got smashed in the truck because they're disposable and they got smashed. Are you going to be able to say, sorry, buddy, sorry, I'm my best friend or my daughter? Like, I don't have enough magazines for you. Like, I'm being real. Like, you cannot own enough magazines. What's the worst that's happening? Oh, you're making a magazine company wealthy. Oh, no, you're making some middleman wealthy. We're not talking about going out and wasting money. We're talking about buying a perishable part of your firearm. I had so many magazines that would make people cry when I got rid of my Rugers. I sold them to some guy with a gun, right? I don't think anybody remembers him anymore. He couldn't even afford to buy all the magazines I had with that thing. I couldn't find all the magazines when he bought them off of me. You should have a lot of magazines. If you think that buying 50 rounds of ammo is enough and you're done, then buy a couple of magazines. But if you buy thousands of rounds of ammo because you understand how scarcity, supply, and demand and politics work, then challenge me on why you shouldn't have more than 10 magazines. In a future, blah, 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 I have lead, I have gold, I have silver. Who has magazines? You think everybody else's magazines are magically regenerating with the video game resupply? Come on. In the future, what's going to be more valuable? Magazines or ammo that you can reload? Can you reload magazines? All right, now let's talk about, at the end of this rant, how do you get free base plates and free springs and free followers? Go to a gun shop and say, can I have a bunch of free springs and free followers and free base plates? You know what happens when people are in competitions or want to look cool or think that it's not a problem to put a giant base plate on their gun? They replace their standard springs, base plates, and followers, and the store has a drawer of them somewhere. They might charge you $1, or they might say, sure, here. So you're welcome. That's my rant. You guys can feel free to rebuttal me, or I'll see if whatever comments, but that's something I'm passionate about. I don't get to rant on it. So thanks for the opportunity, but I won't back down. You cannot own enough magazines, and people that think they're not perishable, just like the cartridge or the ammo or the projectiles, you can get life out of them, but you can't have enough of them. They also don't get cheaper. They don't get cheaper.
So I don't know if I told the story about the mags I have for my P07. I have a 40 cal CZ P07. If you guys know CZs, it's like $35 a magazine. So I don't even have it in my possession, but one of the guys that follows the show, Matthew, went, "Hey, Tony, did you see CZ USA is selling factory CZ mags, 40 mags for $9.99 each?" Well, I'm like, well, let's not be stupid. So I ordered a dozen of them because they're not making them anymore. They're definitely not going to be cheaper than $9.99 for factory originals. So I ordered them. Well, then Jersey went to their 10 rounds or less because the 40 mags were 12 rounders. So then I had to order. Well, I was like, well, that really sucks. I guess I'm going to have to pay somebody to do a 2-round block on these mags. So I was holding off. I go to the website regularly, and they have the 10 rounders for $9.99. So I ordered another 10 of them. So yeah, I'm sitting on 22 magazines, and 10 of them have to be out of state, or the first dozen actually are resting out of state. So yeah, I 100% agree with you when it comes time to stacking magazines. You get them and you have them, especially if it's going to be on a gun you're actually going to run. Again, if it's a range toy, it's a range toy. You decide about that.
Yeah.
But
if it's a playing around gun, I'm talking your carry gun,
Mhm.
your carry gun, your wife's carry gun.
So, and I had this mental, I guess, mental exercise, mental discussion, whatever with yourself, that if I ever sell this P07, it's like, how many magazines do you include with it before you start going, hey, maybe, because I'm leaving a bunch of them in the bag. These are just extras. But I'm like, you can sell these for $35, I guess, or whatever. I'll be able to make money back on them if I have to have to sell the magazines because they're CZ original in the bag.
You know what a pre-ban magazine is?
What, the ones that came out before 1990, those types?
Well, I'm just saying, I hope that we never have to worry about that again. But there are states that have to worry about pre-ban magazines.
Oh, okay,
and
yeah.
If someone were to have taken my advice and just stacked them, talk about potential not just to make a bunch of money, but as importantly, getting magazines that are able to be used into places where they have that crazy infringement or that requirement, that stipulation that they be old.
Yeah. Yeah, because they had to be made before a certain date.
Yeah. Because then you can just, let's say, it turns out something happens like Washington. Washington was even worse. But let's say something happens somewhere. And I'm not wishing that or dooming that on anybody, but I'm just saying it's a potential, just as much as any other potential, theoretically or whatever. And something happens. Let's say, some state says, okay, I can't make anything after this date, and blah, blah, blah. There's some way to tell. Well, you can scoot a dozen something over to somebody and then replace them at your leisure. But now you've gotten them over to somebody in a state in a condition that they can be useful there. That's all I'm saying. It's like having magazines. I don't see much downside to it other than they take up some room.
Yeah, we talk about that, and I sometimes don't include that when I tell people about just regularly purchasing ammo and slowly building up your stockpile of it, just for the days when, like you said, there's a run on it. There could be a run on it for any reason whatsoever. And instead of trying to purchase a case of ammo when it's rare, you can just buy boxes of ammo when it's not. That's what I did with my 22.
Oh, dude, make that a post. That's an awesome that's a great quote right there.
Yeah, dude. I mean, I purchased 22 when it was $19.99 for that 325 round box of free Federal bulk pack. just every week I'd go and pick up a box. That was $20. Spent that on coffee. I didn't feel it, but I think it was maybe, I forget which run on ammo it was and what year it was. But when I opened up my stuff to start going through it so I could run classes, I realized I had well over a dozen boxes of just that one type of ammo. And it was like, good thing, because you can't even find this. So yeah, set yourself up for success when it comes to your firearms. In case things go sideways, and anybody that's been in this more than 5 years has seen it at least go sideways once. And watch ammo and firearms themselves become scarce or just too expensive.
And it's trends. It's a peak and then it goes down again. And I don't want to doom that on us. And I'd love to see a future where, you know, the SBRs and the braces and the redefinition of receivers and 3D printing and the bump stocks and the great stuff with the Hearing Protection Act and all that stuff comes together. And the NFA is challenged on multiple fronts. Congress starts to hold back some or pull back some of the leeway that they've given the executive branch in their ability to regulate through rules. And that's really all it would take. And that can be done on a couple of different fronts. And it's not a eventuality, but it's a definite possibility. And in that future, there's good futures. So I'm not saying that there's all doom and gloom and that you got to hoard mags because it's going the other way at all. I'm just saying that trend wise, the worst that happens is you have invested in the industry a little bit. And if what I just described there happens and everything's belt fed, nobody wants magazines anymore, then I apologize for leading you in a bad direction. But I hope we have that future where I have to apologize for that. Right? Okay. So, that's the magazine one. The next question was, I don't know if anybody can answer this one off the top of their head, probably Clover. What's the current small arms used by the Chinese military today? Oh, he's muted. He's saying it right now, but he's muted.
Yeah, I don't know.
I have no idea either. It looks like a whole bunch of stuff according to Wikipedia. Can this even be right? List of equipment of the Republic of China. Is China the size of Texas, or am I crazy? How big is China?
It's bigger than Texas, I think.
It's not the size of the United States, though, is it?
No, don't think
so.
I don't
know how they have this many guns over there, but I guess they're allowed to buy whatever guns they want. So
there's a lot of military. There's a lot of military, right? A lot of state guns. I'm sure they've got a huge military. China does, as far as people wise. So
yeah, China has the largest standing army in the world, but you have to understand you got first line, second line, third line, militia, local. So you're gonna have different levels of firearms. I mean, I'm sure there's still people running around in China with SKSs and Mosin Nagants. So it's like once it gets in the system, it really doesn't come out. So you're gonna have a bunch of stuff. Frontline, yeah, but frontline units aren't that many comparatively. So pretty much anything in the comm block is probably something China has still in their military.
All right, there's 4 more, but I'm going to do just this one, and then we'll go to the questions from people that are here today. This one's a revolver question. I have a very old revolver that I want to keep for keepsake. It's a 38 Smith & Wesson Perfected. Is that the model, I guess? It's almost like it's only been fired a few times, if that many. How do I clean the powder residue off the end of the barrel?
how you the powder off the end of the barrel? Talking like the muzzle end?
I'm assuming that means the barrel, right? Unless it is a revolver, so I guess it's possible that they're talking about what is that called?
The cylinder,
Birchwood Casey.
Like the
Birchwood Casey makes lead cleaning cloth. Works perfectly. I use it on mine.
It's like an impregnated cloth that you just.
Yep.
That way, it's not like an abrasive or a wire brush or anything.
Yep, exactly. And you just rub it on and just keep rubbing it, and it will wipe off the powder. You guys have seen my shiny 357 Magnum, and that's all I use on it. My FFL is also a gunsmith, and he also shot police league with revolvers. And he was like, "Yeah, that's all I use on mine. It works perfectly." So that's what I suggest.
So it's essentially, I'm guessing then, it's using like a chemical and then chemical first and then physical. So that it's, since it's impregnated with something that softens the residue, and then you're only using the cloth instead of like a brush or something to try to physically scrape it. You don't have
Hmm.
no danger of messing with the finish.
Yep, just keep using that over and over again until it cleans it with finger pressure. If you want to get crazy with it, you take the cloth, you put it down on the table, and then you turn the barrel on top of it and rub the barrel down on it. Put it using slight pressure.
Oh,
If you want to
that's
add
super.
more pressure,
Like that's
yeah,
more than you could add with a hand or something. Yeah.
exactly. And it cleans this thing up to make it look. People look at me and go, "Wait a minute, you shoot this?" I'm like, "I shoot it. Yeah, we shoot it continually." That's how clean it can be. And China is slightly smaller than the United States comparatively.
Okay.
9.8 million square miles, and China has 9.6 million square kilometers. Excuse me.
Well, then yeah, it makes sense if they're that big to have. I mean, I know they had a lot of people, but I guess I mean, it doesn't really matter even if they were smaller with that many people. Like you're saying, they're going to have so many police departments. They're going to have a million things. All right, I'm going to leave a couple of those questions, but there is a website out there called Ask Gun Questions. I don't really post anything about it except the links in here. Maybe there's some old links out on the internet or whatever, but still, people do use it, and you're welcome to. It's just a place that has a Google form on it. No, there's no. I'm not trying to ask for any personal info or collect anything, or you don't have to put it in an email or anything like that. It's not some kind of a weird marketing funnel. It's just really ask questions, and we get together on Saturdays and attempt to answer them from our perspective. But there's a live conversation happening here as well, and we're going to answer some of those or address some of those. First one is kind of in a different direction. Oh wait, hold on, Clover. Did you want to say anything else about that revolver one?
Nah.
Okay. I was going to say the only thing else. What about one of those vibration tanks or whatever they're called, sonic tanks? Or is that not a good idea for an old gun?
I don't know. Never owned one. How about you, Clover?
Gotta have one big enough. I do have one. It's not big enough to do much in it. I mean, if you disassembled a bunch of stuff, you might could take a handgun disassembled and get in there.
That's another option potentially, and then maybe a shop might have one, and then they'll sometimes run it with like some kind of a cleaner that it's like literally vibrating in a cleaner solvent solution or whatever. But I don't know if that's always the right thing to do, because sometimes if you shake apart a bunch of rust, like you're not doing it any favors.
Right.
So Mike White, 2A Advocacy is the channel name. I think I'm going to change my channel name to just plain Mike White, as this name is just too long. Thoughts? And his logo is a white circle with crossed ARs. It says Mike White on top of both of the ARs, or each of the ARs. And then underneath the two ARs, it has the letters 2A in real bold. I'm a big fan of that logo, but what are you guys' opinions of or answers to this question?
It's Tony Simon from the Second Is for Everyone diversity shoot. I'm not going to comment on how long he makes a name. If you want to condense, if you want to condense it to something, yeah, cool.
So I would say spend a little time, first of all, thinking about, what you're going to change it to. Because of two reasons. Number one, you can't just willy nilly start changing names. At some point, they will lock you, and there'll be like a time limit, like they'll lock you and you can't change it for so long. We've seen that happen with people goofing around with their channels, and accidentally lock their name in something totally stupid for like 30 days or 90 days or whatever. So be mindful of that. Second thing is, if you're talking about your channel name in the sense of just participating on YouTube, like who cares? If you're talking about channel name from the perspective of a content creator, you need to think about what your channel name is. just being a name lends itself to either entertainment personality channels or potentially like blogging channels or something like that. But even in that case, a lot of times it would be something like Mike White blogs or Mike White blogs or something of that nature. So having a little bit of an identifier with your project, what you're doing, kind of what your channel's about. I mean, for example, gun websites, right? Pretty easy to tell what gun websites is. And then combination, yeah, with your logo, combination of your logo and your name, especially, like be paying attention to. I mean, does that kind of stuff match up? Does it fit? So yeah, that's kind of my advice.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to be serious about it, yeah, you have to think about what you're doing with it. It doesn't have to be permanent, but what are you doing with it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I mean, my name is Simon Says Train. Now, it's not what it started off as. It started off as Mr. TL Simon. And the reason being was because I didn't want to be anonymous on air when I stated an opinion. I didn't want to be able to hide behind anonymity. I want you to know my name. If I stated an opinion, if I was right or wrong, I'd stand behind it. But when I became a firearms trainer, it was more like to convince people, even with my name, to go train, to take this seriously if you're going to be in it and shoot your guns or train in whatever you do. So that was the reason I named the things I've named them. So it wasn't really that complicated. It was pretty straightforward, but also you have to make sure no one else is using whatever you use too. You don't want to have it be so close to somebody else's that when people try to remember it, they punch in somebody else's stuff and go to their page.
Right.
Can't find my mic or my mute. So I would say that going with just Mike White, you're gonna, like I think both of you said, you're gonna get lost with the other. I can't even imagine how many of those are in there. So adding something to it is probably better than not. Having the whole thing, it does dedicate your channel to that concept. Let me just ask two questions, I think, to bounce it back to you guys to ponder. Having a channel, Mike White, 2A advocacy, and then he's out there doing other things. Does that help normalize advocacy? Because he's not an activist. I differentiate the two between activist is going out there and doing something specifically, while advocacy is being an advocate. Like I'm all for it, but I'm doing my thing, right? So if he's Mike White, 2A advocacy, and then he's out there doing cars and motorcycles and whatever, or cars and guitars or something, right? And then he's got that name. Now people are in chats with him. He's doing his thing, and it's always this 2A advocacy. What's all that about? Is that normalizing it? And then the other way around, if he's just plain old Mike White, and everything he's doing is, literally his actions are advocating for 2A, is that also an option for normalizing? Because now you're not you're not putting up a flag all the time. You're just being you, but here's what you're doing. And I'll throw that back to both of you guys. How do you want to? Is there anything to say about that?
You can lead off, Clover.
Nah, go ahead.
Okay. It is. I equate this to how I live my life at my job. It's letting people know where you stand on the Second Amendment, and that comes with all the good and all the bad that comes with. So it's letting people know where you stand, but understand that it might take some people off, turn some people off, start conversations that you really weren't about or thinking about having. So when you're in let's say you're into jet skiing and you're Mike White 2A in jet skiing, and then all of a sudden someone goes, yo, what's up with the 2A stuff? And now let's say they're rabidly pro gun control. Do you want your conversations to be hijacked by that? I have no problem with that, but just be aware that that could happen when you stand up like this and you put it all out, your feelings on one topic that can be divisive. You can end up in conversations you don't want to have at that time. but I don't think that should be an overwhelming thing. I'm just thinking, I mean, an overriding thing. I just think it's something you should be aware of.
Yep. Listen to Tony.
And then I guess a second direction or a different alternative would be, what about just having another channel for your other thing or for doing other stuff? I mean,
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Always good too. Always good if you just don't want that smoke. If you just want to talk about whatever it is your other hobby or interest, do that too.
For people that don't know, when you're in a YouTube in a browser, at least on the computer, you can go up and I think I'm logged into like 12. How many is it? Sorry, I mean the same here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm signed into 10 YouTube accounts right now. And it's as simple as going up to that icon at the top right and saying log into another account. And at 10, it'll make you rotate through and only have 10 at a time. But you can have any number of YouTube accounts you want. Like Clover has one about playing cards, right? Where he trades, not playing cards, sports cards, right? Where it's a totally different channel. You can just click a little button, drop down, flip over to that channel and comment in that channel name. You know, it'll effectively be in a different puppet or a different glove on YouTube. 500 said, heavy duty country put out a video about a woman being robbed. She pulled out her EDC and is now being sued by the family. Absolutely insane. I'm only bringing that up to say that, and you guys can say whatever you want about this one. I just brought it up for me to say, or to bring up the point that we often hear that there's millions of cases of self-defense each year, you know, where people have to defend themselves, and then that's disputed to be either hundreds of thousands or sometimes even tens of thousands. So even if it's tens of thousands and you divide that tens of thousands up between the 365 days in a year and the 50 states in a year, you get a heck of a lot, even at the lowest estimates, a heck of a lot of defensive uses of a firearm. We're not seeing all of them, obviously. So what are we seeing? We're seeing the extreme examples. Please do not make decisions and base your opinions of others on these extreme examples, which are designed to get views or used as illustration purposes or whatever. It's like watching cops and thinking everything police officers do is that extreme. They're handpicking, right, the coolest shit or the funniest shit or whatever it is, and that's what they're putting up. The people that have to get you to watch them every day, that are desperate for you to click on their stuff because they need to have those views for whatever their goals, are going to pull the extremes. So you guys can comment this all you want, but there's a reason I almost never talk about self-defense and stuff like that. It's a factor of gun ownership, but you know, so is gun cleaning. I never talk about that either. But anyway, I don't know if you guys have anything you can say about this one.
I do. All right. As one of the co-hosts of Self-Defense Gun Stories, I think if you have a firearm that you're going to use for self-defense, or you're thinking about in the self-defense mindset, it's good to watch these things as teachable moments, but it's not the norm. I noticed, and again, we go back to the years we've all been involved in this, the typical self-defense or the thought about self-defense scenario that most people pulled up back in the day is a junkie in the alley. You know what I mean? That was the thing that people used to say, at least growing up. And then it turned into a person maybe breaking into your house or a crackhead. But now the reality of it is home invasions and multiple people breaking into your home. That's like the new trend in self-defense, new trend in break-ins. So you have to change and become aware that maybe the thing you imagine happening isn't happening as much as you thought. Sometimes you have walk-ins, sometimes you have break-ins, sometimes you have confrontations in the street. So it's good to watch stuff like this, but you don't base everything around it. You use it as teachable moments, and also use it as the ability to, one, change your range practice around, maybe work on some skills because you saw it in this video. And again, these are rare. I mean, if almost 400 million people live in America and we have 2.5 million, this is going with the highest number, self-defense firearms uses a year, it's still less than 1%. That's less than 0.5%. So just keep that in mind when we're doing things like this. It's armed self-defense is rare, but you only can take one loss. So if you're gonna carry, practice. Be aware of what's happening in the world, but don't let it rule you. And also be aware of what your local laws are so you don't violate them or get in trouble if you win the first fight. You don't want to go to prison because you uh, overstepped yourself and used deadly force when you didn't need to, or didn't stop using deadly force early enough, as we saw in one of the videos in the shooting in Texas in the Taqueria, when the guy shot the bad guy and then he shot him in the head after he was no longer a threat. So there's a lot you can learn. Please use it as that.
You got anything for that one, Clover? You want to add anything to that one?
No, I think you hit it. I mean, you got to be really careful with pretty much anything that gets a lot of traction and a lot of attention, be it the news or on YouTube or whatever. That's the most savory, juicy, like extreme, usually examples, either that or it's over exaggerated.
Mhm.
Of anywhere, regardless of the subject, quite honestly, like anything that's out there, like usually it's the hot topic of the day for a reason, right? Um, but ultimately, when something comes up about, oh, so and so's suing so and so, they make a big deal. They always make a big deal that this person is suing that person, right? It may be, whoever. It may be a group of people suing a company, right? Or one person suing another person, or one person's family. So you can sue anybody for anything. Like I could initiate a lawsuit come Monday morning to 500 Magnum, suing 500 Magnum because I don't like his avatar on YouTube, and I want $1 million because I think it offends me. I could literally file that lawsuit. Now, does that mean anything at the end of the day? No. Mean it's going to go forward? Means that I'm going to win anything? No. But I can do it. So that's often what we hear is, oh, this happened and these people are suing, right? And that's the hot thing. Like, oh my God. And it's just, yeah, just understand that lawsuits happen every day of the week. As G-Web said, self-defense things happen every day of the week. And they're going to pluck out the most exaggerated things to really, really try to push a narrative, right? It's, our side will do that. The Pro 2A Pro Gun side, there are elements that are going to do that because they're going to play into the sensationalism, right? I don't want to say that's a fear mongering tactic, but it's definitely a tactic either way.
That's a good one. What you do? You work this off of somebody, or did you come up with this one?
What, that? Oh,
Yeah.
me not. Yeah, I just came up with it.
Yeah, that's
I
awesome.
like
That
it.
sums it
Yeah.
up well.
I like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Too bad you said it on this show. Now it becomes property of the Gun Websites Corporation and Incorporated International.
Well, one of the big things that happened recently was the mall shooting and the 40-yard shot. And like every channel jumped on it and wanted to talk about it. And then the guys went to the range and shot it. And I'm like, it's good to know your skill set. It's good to know your limitations. But that was a unicorn event. That was, a 40-yard self-defense shot in a mall with people running, and he stopped the bad guy. But that's rare. And a lot of people are like, oh, I have to practice up on that. Figure out what distance you can shoot safely from, but let's just use that as a reference. That's not what's gonna happen. That probably rarely happens. The average is still, the whole 3-foot thing. But again, that's still an average. That's not a script. That's not a look. Just work with your gun, work with your firearm, because that's what you're carrying and that's what we're talking about. But there's a whole lot more that goes into self-defense and pulling triggers. It's awareness, it's self-reliance, it's not putting yourself in those situations in the first place. It's being able to see what's around you and staying out of stupid places at stupid times, doing stupid things with stupid people. There's more than just the firearm involved, but when it comes to the skill set, yes, learn it. Learn to put rounds on target, learn to draw cleanly, but also learn to get the hell out of there before it even goes sideways, or not be there in the first place.
So when I was ranting probably about the magazines, Emery said or asked, "So how will we be affected if we do go into World War III?" I'm not sure if that means for magazines, but is that too big a question to ask? It's the late in the show. Yeah, I've
Oh,
been talking about that in a while.
I think it'll affect magazines. I think it'll affect ammo. I think it'll affect products we produce. Again, we're talking World War III, not just a, not a regional war. Let's look at what it affected in World War One and Two. It affected firearm production in the civilian market. They just stopped making guns for civilians. So all you had was the used market. The brass and everything was directed to the military and law enforcement use only. Uh, I don't know if it was only, but I know it was severely limited, including the resources used to make this stuff. So that's going to be the effect that's going to have on firearms magazines and those kind of things.
I mean, I haven't had a real conversation with people about World War III. I can't remember the last time, but things have changed so much. I haven't had a conversation about a potential World War III in so long that it's been before any kind of weird craziness of the last few years. So that would be actually kind of an interesting conversation to hear. I don't know if I necessarily have much to add other than, what do you call it, opinion. I've never researched it or really thought much about it. So it would just be like offhand opinion, you know what I mean? Like it's not well thought out or researched opinion. But I don't know, Clover, you got any opinion on this question? Or anything on any angle on this one?
Not really. I mean, who knows? I mean, there's way too many variables, right?
That's why I just went with the historical model. What did we do in the last two?
Well,
war typically helps. War typically helps the economy. One thing to look at.
A world war, seriously, like a world war, and then they're definitely not going to care about civilian arms anymore. So it's just going to be whatever you got. And are you going to need them? I mean, in the past world wars, we were over here owning this entire hemisphere. Now we've got some of the largest criminal entities on the largest criminal entities on the planet. Maybe, I think, I don't actually know, but I'm pretty sure the largest criminal entities on the planet, something like 100 miles south of me right now. And you think they're just going to go, oh, let's wait till the war's over before we just do whatever weird shit we're going to do the rest of the hemisphere or whatever. So
yeah, I mean, I think so. But also, I think that, World War III looks much different today than it did way back then. I mean, look at the jump in technology and everything else. You're talking World War III. World War III will be will they be a what am I thinking? A
nuclear aftermath thing?
No, I don't even think so. I think it'll be more cyber warfare type stuff.
Gen 5 at warfare.
That type. Yeah, I think it'd be more that type of thing than anything. With nuclear, you got to look at with nuclear. There's the whole mutually assured destruction things, and yes, I mean there's a few countries that could care less, but the vast majority of them do. I mean, world domination. You can't dominate a world that you've destroyed. And so that's where nuclear war comes into play. So, like, I realize we're in a nuclear age, and that's been a thing, and whatever. But then again, if somebody is I don't think they're going to cut off their nose to spite their face type thing. So while they may do stuff like take North Korea, for example, taking their ICBMs and shooting them out into the ocean, and that's just posturing for the most part, I think. And at the end of the day, I don't know that they're going to want to do something that's going to, you can't be king of the world if you destroy the world, right?
Yeah, I hear you, but that implies that somebody wants to have something at the end. If you're frustrated because somebody else ruined the planet and you just want to see it end faster, you know what I mean? Like that's a scary thing, but we don't get into all that. So,
right. But about the only thing is like the radical, like caliphates and stuff in the Middle East. Like I can see them subscribing to that scorched earth thing, because if they do it, they get their rewards in the afterlife or whatever, right? But if you're talking about like a Russia, or you're talking about like a North Korea, I mean, those are power trip people. Those are not, the afterlife is going to treat me well, so it doesn't matter what happens to me here, people. This is all my opinion, of course.
Well, I mean, it's valid. It's just that when you start talking fifth generation warfare where you don't need state entities to be participatory in the
Right.
downfall of it all. That's the idea that you don't need to be a police officer to throw a rock at a piece of glass, right? You can just be, you could be inadvertent. A rock could hit a piece of glass accidentally because glass and rocks exist, and someone could interpret that as a deliberate action against them and start a war. We live in a world where that kind of crap happens too. I don't want to get off of it, unless you guys have something. Let's take it in a different direction completely. I happen to have a co-host over here who is asleep, and I happen to have this chunk of blueberry bagel with a little bit of peanut butter on it. And the poll over there right now is, if I were to set that down over, if I were to set that down, is he going to just eat it? Is he going to sniff it first and then eat it? Is he not even going to sniff it, or is he going to not even wake up? But he's actually awake. So you have a moment or two to get into the poll.
All right, I might change my vote because never mind.
I'm pretty sure. Oh no, he's sniffing it.
Oh,
That's the question.
okay.
He definitely ate it. But did he wake up? What is he sleep eating it, or is he sleep sniffing it, or did he actually wake up and eat it?
Okay.
He's awake. He's awake. There's way too much chewing going on. He's awake.
Oh yeah.
Oh no, he's awake now. But I'm thinking when he woke up, that was zombie like sniffing. That was reflex sniffing. He was not able to stop that.
That was reflex. I'm seeing the cartoon now of the little smoke thing that came out and tickled his nose and picked him up.
Exactly. He's just known that was there, and he's like, there's a good chance that that's going in this belly. All right, so that's the end of that poll. All right, so hopefully that one, if anyone was listening and getting any kind of stress over the whole last subject, we've now changed the subject into a little puppy, so he's good for something. More than a couple of things, he's good. The next question is from Ozzy, who makes holsters, by the way. I don't know if he's doing it professionally or not, but he's done an impressive job of sharing those with people, the ones that he's created. He has made a couple. He's made some for commemorative things and for friends and stuff. So anyway, Ozzy is saying, pre-2020, I would buy 3 to 5 boxes of ammo a week. Easy way to build a stockpile. So that was kind of riffing off of what we were talking about as far as kind of SHTF, shit hits the fan, and potentially prepping or just dollar cost averaging. Is that the right word? For buying often so that you're potentially never paying too much and you're paying an average. You're never paying too much, essentially. You want to riff on this?
As somebody that was that still is tactically thrifty, yeah. If you buy 1,000 rounds, it costs less than buying a box of 50. Yeah, but 1,000 rounds are still $300, $400 out of my wallet, and that box of 50 is $19.99. Like, overall, yeah, I might be spending 5-10 cents more a round, but it's easier for me to achieve buying a box of 50. You know what I mean? 20 times than it is purchasing 1,000 in one shot, because I can spread that over and not feel that. So, whatever trick you need to do, you need to build up enough so in case hard times come or the price flies through the roof or it becomes rare, that you have what you need instead of excuses. Now, I work with a bunch of dudes in law enforcement who, at the end of the day, they're scrambling to find enough ammo to shoot qualifications because they wait for the last minute to shoot qual, to purchase ammo for their qual. I'm like, you don't have a box of 50? No, I just don't keep, whatever's in my magazine. Okay. Not a cool way to live your life. But yeah. So just whatever you need to do to have a stockpile for when things go bad, things go wrong, or it just gets hard to find. Everything doesn't have to be a shit hit the fan situation.
Yep.
Do you think it's just, our lifetime or just in general being older? I would think even in other times of different distribution lines, even if you lived on your own farm and everything pretty much you're doing, you're getting yourself, you're going to have good years and bad years. So you're going to keep stores, right? Like that's just the nature of living through seasons and years and stuff, right? Like after a certain number of years, you're like, oh, you know what? I need to have extra just in case, right? And then just apply that to You can apply that to getting a second Aegis gun cleaning kit, right? Even though you have one that you use, having one on the shelf ain't a bad idea. If something happens and the supply lines are all chopped up, you think you're never going to wear out a brush or break a rod or something?
I mean, and especially if it's not um, very expensive. Like if it's something I don't want to spend other people's money, but I look at like about 20 to 30 bucks is something I can buy without hurting myself. You know what I mean? Without throwing a real monkey wrench into a plan for something I actually use or can get a second one of. So yeah, it doesn't have to be a long list of things, but it can be a list of things you want to double up on that don't cost a lot of money, and they'll kind of fly under the radar until you need one, and you're like, oh damn, why didn't I have two of those? You know, they didn't cost that much. Why didn't I have two of them? And now I can't find them. And I think one of the things that helps with that is to either be, what do you call those people? Get email alerts when things go on sale just from a multitude of different websites, and things like Sportsman's Guide have things on there. So when you see it come up, you go, oh, snap, I can pick one of those up. And it's not a big deal. If it's an extra holster, if it's an extra mag, if you're trying to build up the magazine stockpile, like you said, cleaning kit, first aid kits, any of that, you can slowly build up without costing your arm or a leg. And now you have it for when times get hard. Heck, even have it for trade. If you want to throw something in to pick something else up, hey man, I got a first aid kit, 2 boxes of 9, and something else for that 22 you got. You know what I mean? It's just having things that other people could use that you have extra of. Barter items.
Are we at a 90-minute point almost where we could wrap it up?
It's up to you guys.
I don't know if I missed any questions. We got plenty we can talk about off here. Like I say this, I don't think I hide the fact that half of the show is an excuse for us three to just chat offline after. But we've always threatened that we'd keep it at 90 minutes. If anybody's got some specific questions, feel free to drop them. But let's see. Tony just got back from Arizona. Did you do a diversity shoot as soon as you got back, or am I crazy?
Nope, got one coming up on the 16th of March. That's when my next one was.
Okay. You were talking about the Nebraska trip potentially being come back and have to go straight.
Oh yeah, we actually have dates and a range in Lincoln, Nebraska. We have a week. I know the week we're going to run these things in, and I think I have 4 different ranges: Kansas City, Lincoln, Nebraska, and I forget where the other one was. I wrote them all down the other day. So as soon as we get a more solid foothold on all of them, I will start posting them and letting you know where we're going. But we have ranges, and we have the date, as in the week that we're going to do it. I just don't know the individual day we're going to be at those ranges. But diversity shoots will be in the Midwest this year.
Right on. Clover, what do you got coming up?
Got the podcast next week. Ghost and Clover podcast will be kicking off here pretty soon.
Nice.
3D printer should be in this week. Not that I'll get it set up necessarily this week. So got all kinds of reviews, all kinds of other things coming down the line. Lot going on.
Cool.
That'll be interesting. So I don't know. It's just a little 2 side notes, I guess, or a side note of a side note. Since you brought up the 3D printer, I logged on to. I don't think it was today. One of the recent times I logged onto the computer and opened up YouTube, it like glitched and brought me up. I don't know. Whenever you posted that thing about the printers on its way, UPS or whatever, like I saw that day's stuff come up, and I was like, oh, what, did Clover get his printer and he set it up already? Or like, why is he posting about this? And then I'm like, wait a minute, I've seen this post and it's unclicked or whatever. So anyway, there's just a weird like glitch that it could give me some kind of weird echo of days ago or something. Anybody's had that happen. I know people have mentioned some weird glitches. I imagine it's just way the internet works and caches work and stuff. Maybe they're playing with the way that they're doing that kind of stuff.
I mean, like the community post. What, like you didn't see the community post till later or something, or?
No, I saw it the day it came up. I'm just saying the one, I think it was either this morning. I don't think it was here because I just barely logged on for this. I don't think I logged on earlier today. So it might have been sometime yesterday. I just turned this computer on and logged in, and it was like turned off, so like I turned logged in, and it brought up all those posts from that day, and that was like days earlier. So I'm just saying it was just a weird kind of like echo glitch in the matrix where I saw as if it was 3 days ago or whatever days that was. You posted that.
Gotcha.
And the only reason I was like, wait a minute, did you already get it that fast? But anyway, so yeah, Clover's going to get a 3D printer, and well, we'll talk off air. So I was going to ask you a couple of questions about that. How much of that you're going to get into as far as setting it up and stuff.
Right.
As far as going live and that. And of course, I've got a project going. I'll end the show with a thing that Foss made me to promote the project, but we were trying to buy Allen Anker's embroidery machine from him. That's about 30-something% last time I looked. So thanks to all the people who are participating. We've got over 50 people on board already. Our goal is 140, so we're getting there. We're not quite to halfway. We're attempting to buy an embroidery machine from our friends in California, and then use that for hats and patches and imagine some other projects, but use that for prototyping and for doing small batches and kind of helping people. Like as prototyping is the idea for helping people get their patches dialed in, so when they get production runs, they get the exact thing they're looking for. And just to do some of that stuff in workshops so that we can advocate for some good projects that are out there. So if you're able to participate in that, now's the time. It's just got a day or so left. It's going to end on Monday night. And then if you're not able to participate, or you already have, we definitely encourage you and ask you politely to share that project around. The crowdfunding has two parts to it, the funding part and the crowd part. So the more people that hear about it and find out about it and see that it's about to end and see that it's approaching its the goal, the more likely somebody might be to participate. And although it might be in your feed days or weeks ago, having it up there again as a reminder is much appreciated. On the other side of that, anybody who's a Second Amendment advocate, anybody who's out there doing work for what the Second Amendment protects, and you're curious about crowdfunding, particularly on Indiegogo, but it applies to Kickstarter and some of the other platforms as well, let me know. And we can sit down and go off air and show you the behind the scenes, how to set one up, how to calculate it, how to balance the shipping and the purchases and the calendars and everything that you're going to need, all the moving parts, which are often difficult to get dialed in, especially in a topic that we're working in, the gun community and in firearms and in advocacy specifically. So I've done these 37 times, and one of the reasons I do them is so that I can get this concept of crowdfunding out there. We got Bloomberg, the 14th richest dude on the planet. On one side, he was able to hire the lady from Monsanto who was responsible for normalizing Roundup, and nobody sued Monsanto over Roundup, hired her to act like a grassroots advocate for gun control. So on our side, we don't want that. We don't want some fame-seeking, legacy-seeking billionaire, I guess, to be our hero. Instead, we want to use that idea that liberty requires eternal vigilance. We want to be those pieces of vigilance, right? We want to be that vigilance. So being powerful, being able, and being able to do this stuff in capitalism requires the skill set to raise funds, to be able to do these projects without having to necessarily be independently wealthy or have a sugar mama. Now, if you are a sugar mama and you're looking to spend money on things, we do have a PayPal. Tony has a PayPal. Clover is not looking for sugar mama, so you don't have to worry about him. But both Tony and I do have PayPals or Venmos or any other transfer that you prefer. But if you're not going to wait for a sugar mama or some kind of financial hero, then understanding these crowdfunding projects I think it's it's been successful for our projects. It's been useful for what we do. I'm trying to pass that information on to others as well. So that's a second or an ulterior motivation for the project. All right, with that, I'll quit ranting. And you guys have anything else before we head out?
Nope. I was just doing the math on how we can be our own pro-gun billionaires. It doesn't take a lot, man. Just everybody participating. So, yeah, I agree with you 100%, dude.
I just want to take a second and say thanks to the people. Mike White, 2A Advocacy, said that he shares it in the live streams he's on. That is much appreciated. I know a couple of people are doing that, or not more than a couple, a bunch of people are doing that, and it is much appreciated. Again, keeping it in people's minds is that kind of impulse item purchase type of concept. I don't know what the word for that is in marketing, but just keeping it in people's minds as it gets closer to the approaching deadline. Again, can't thank you enough for that. Really, I'm looking forward to being able to get this thing as we get closer and closer to it. I'm doing the numbers that the machine doesn't cost $7,000. There's buffer in there because I'm poor right now because I'm paying off the taxes and the bad calculations on large projects in the past. I've done 37 projects. I'm not saying that I'm successful on them. I'm not wealthy because of these 37 projects. The projects have been successful, and I can tell you how to not get screwed over in taxes. I can tell you that. And I can tell you how to incorporate enough money into the project so that there's taxes. But as it's getting closer to the point where it'll pay the machine off, but not pay the taxes, I'm still calculating, how to just get the machine anyway and get the tax money somewhere else. So, like I say, there's a lot to it. And I do appreciate the people that are keeping it on people's minds as it gets closer to the deadline, because as it gets closer to the deadline, as it gets closer to the goal, there's more, I guess, fun in it, or and there's more incentive for people to jump on board. So again, can't thank you enough. And hopefully you consider yourselves participants in it. And like I say, if you're actually interested in seeing behind the scenes, the dashboard there, it's one of the reasons to do this stuff. All right, with that, we'll throw a quick commercial out here for it and see you all. Well, let's see. We've got Paul wasn't on today. I guess he's flying back from his vacation, and it's not really a vacation if he was going live most of the days he was out there. But been looking forward to hearing what the gun laws were like in the Virgin Islands. And I think he said he knew about some gun shops. I don't know if he said he went to them or not, at least on Tuesday when I heard from him. But Tony will probably be on a show before I'll ever talk to him in person. So if you remember, next time you get on Paul's show, ask him about the gun shops in the Virgin Islands, if he got
Okay, cool.
But otherwise, normally Flight Society podcast would be on just before this. Travis was on earlier in the day. But after this, I don't know, you may know if G23 is doing his show. After that, though, Brooke Cheney will be doing a weekly focus on suicide prevention and mental health awareness in order to have more effective conversations with gun owners and anti-gun people, having knowledge of the situation that 2 out of every 3 deaths with a firearm are suicide. And of course, every single death is used against gun owners, against our property and our rights. So having more effective conversations with the antis, letting them understand whose graves they're standing on to accuse us, and better understanding it on our side, because what we're really trying to do is end that number, not because of the guns or anything else, but because those people are people we know. If they're committing suicide in that way, then more than likely they're in our community, right? So these are people that we know, and these are anyway. There's ways that you can learn to help and to not be apprehensive about helping or attempting to help. And with this many issues that are going on, everybody knows all the stressors out there. Having a consistent effort on that normalizes the conversation. And I'm not doing a great job of having a good description of it, but what Brooke offers is to help hone that and to help give you tools for your toolbox. Otherwise, we've got Hillbilly does a show in the evenings on Saturday, more lighthearted show. Still focused on firearms. And do we know if Foss is doing an overnight. I think I heard this is the week for the overnight. He'll do a show every other week, late night for the people that are up overnight. And then we got the radio shows on Sunday. Clover does his podcasts. And did you say Ghost and Clover is coming up this next Monday or no?
That's on Sunday, so I'm not sure. Let me look. That
Those
will
are
launch.
They don't necessarily show up in my feed in order. If that makes
That
sense.
will launch on the 5th, so a week from tomorrow.
Nice.
Okay, thanks again, everybody. Quit saying thanks. See ya.